He didn't just take a car. He tried to take my younger son's independence and sell it to the highest bidder. I'm the father in this story, and I'll tell you exactly how it happened, how one son forged another son's name on a title, how a dealer didn't notice, how a buyer drove away in a life that wasn't his, and how we walked into the DMV with a folder and a spine and made the system tell the truth. My older son forged his brother's signature on the title, and I am not proud of all the ways I failed before the day I finally stood up and did the job a father is supposed to do. We live in a place I'll call Birchfield, a town with 3 stoplights and 1 diner that still puts your coffee down before you sit. I'm Tom. My wife Lena runs the front desk at a dental clinic where everyone fears the drill and thanks her for a sticker anyway. We have 2 boys. Ryan, our first, the charmer, the improviser, the one who could talk a parking ticket into a warning, and Miles, our younger, the saver, the planner, the one who color codes a budget like it's art. From the time they were little, Ryan found the edges and leaned, borrowed without asking, returned late, told the version of events that made him look responsible enough to be forgiven. We didn't raise him to be reckless. We raised him in a house that rewarded good stories. That's on me. Miles watched all of that and built a different map. He worked weekends at the lumberyard, stacked 2x4s in discipline, and bought a used Corolla with a maintenance binder so thick you could prop open a door with it. That car meant the usual things: work, friends, dates, but it also meant something I didn't appreciate until it was gone. He could leave any situation that deserved to be left. A car, for a kid who refuses to owe anyone, is a key to a door you hope you never need to slam. We kept important papers in a plastic tub in the hallway: birth certificates, pink slips, insurance declarations, a warranty for a dishwasher we stopped pretending could be fixed. When Miles brought home the title after he paid off the last of his small loan, I slid it into a manila folder and told myself it was safe because the tub was labeled important and lived on the highest shelf. Safety and convenience often wear the same jacket. It was my first mistake, and I can't claim I didn't know better. I did. I just thought the word family would guard what the lock did not. The week it happened felt ordinary. The Thursday before, Ryan asked to borrow the car for a couple of hours because his friend's truck wouldn't start. Miles said no without explanations and left for his shift. The air in our kitchen cooled a degree. Ryan made a joke about car owners becoming landlords, and I chuckled because fathers chuckle when they should correct. The next morning, the driveway was empty before sunup. I assumed Miles left early. At noon, Miles texted from the lumberyard. "Hey, did you move my car? Can't find it in the lot." We thought towed. We thought stolen. We didn't think the truth. I called the city. No tow. I called our insurance. No report. I called Ryan. He didn't answer my first or second call, which means he saw my name and thought about it. When he finally picked up, his voice had the loose confidence he gets when he believes he's out ahead of the facts. "Hey, Dad, where's your brother's car?" "What? How'd I know?" He bought himself 5 seconds that way. Then he said, "I'm at work," though I could hear a parking lot and a gull. "I'm not going to do this," I said. "Where is it?" Silence then. "It's handled." That sentence landed like a cough in a quiet church. "What does that mean?" "It means I sold it," he said, as if he were explaining I had the wrong channel on the TV, as if what he did was a favor to be understood rather than a crime to be named. "Ryan," I said, steady, because if I wasn't steady I would break a plate. "You can't sell what you don't own." "Dad, it was sitting there. He barely uses it. He can borrow mine." "Buying what?" "The truck that worked when it wanted." The confidence that evaporated when a problem required a receipt. I felt my face get hot, the way it does when an oven fog hits you in the chest. "How," I asked, "did you sell a car you don't own?" "Title," he said, like the word excused the act. "You keep everything in that tub." I brought the guy the title. It was easy. He had found the folder I thought was safe because it lived in a place labeled safe. He had found the line where his brother's name belongs, and he had written a version he thought would pass. "You forged your brother's signature," I said. Saying it out loud changed its weight. "That's a felony, Ryan." He made a sound that tried to be a scoff and failed. "Don't be dramatic. People do this all the time." I hung up before I said something that would end our relationship in a different way. I called the used car lot. After I waded through a hold music that sounded like an apology, A man with a voice like sawdust said they had purchased a silver Corolla with RVN, cash as is, by the book, and resold it the same day. All the paperwork looked great, he said. I asked him to read me the seller's name. He read Miles and then signature of seller. He told me it matched the license. I told him it couldn't. He told me the car was already with the buyer and that any issues were out of our hands. I told him the state licensing board might disagree, and his sawdust voice lost its humor. He offered to have someone call me back. I didn't keep my phone in my pocket by chance. I kept it there like a defense. I drove to pick up Miles from work. He stood by the time clock with shoulders that tried not to sag. Was it towed? He asked. Hope doing a poor job of sitting still in his throat? Ryan sold it, I said. He stared at me like I had told him the sky changed direction. He laughed once, a sound with no humor in it, then stopped. No, he said, small, then louder. No. We're going to the DMV, I said. Bring every document you have. We'll sort what we can now, and what we can't we'll start. But we're not going to let paper win just because it arrived first. At the DMV, the line looked like a line looks defeated, scrolling, humming. I asked for a supervisor, not because I deserved one, but because I didn't have time for someone who wasn't allowed to say yes. When I explained what happened, I used short sentences. My son's car was sold without his permission. The dealer recorded a transfer with a forged signature. We need to flag the title and stop any further funny business. The supervisor was a woman whose eyes told me she had seen things like this before. We slid our documents under the glass. Miles's original purchase contract, the last registration card, his insurance ID, and, crucially, a stack of old checks with his signature. She pulled up the record. I see a transfer request filed by a dealer yesterday, she said. Haven't printed the new title yet. She looked at the signature image. Did you sign this? She asked Miles. He shook his head. Quietly, warmly, she said, This is fraud. Then she did the first useful thing in a long afternoon. She put an administrative hold on the title. It freezes the process, she explained, so a new piece of paper can't pretend to be the truth. She clicked, printed, stamped. The DMV clerk called it fraud and froze the transfer. There are words in these offices that change the weather. Hold. Fraud. Affidavit. She slid a form toward us. This, she said, tapping the top, is an affidavit of non-consent. It's you under oath saying, I didn't sign this, they didn't have my permission, fill it out. We notarize it here. Make 2 copies. One stays with us. One goes to the dealer. One goes to the buyer if you can reach them. The hold stays until the matter is resolved. She told us to file a police report. I know, she said, reading what my face must have been spelling out. It's family, but forgery is forgery. If you want people to take your paper seriously, you need another piece of paper with a badge on it. Then she lowered her voice just enough to matter. If the dealer doesn't play nice, call the state dealer licensing board. They don't like when as starts to look like look away. We signed the affidavit. The notary asked Miles to raise his right hand and swear. He did, voice steady. I felt proud and ashamed in the same breath. Proud he could be steady when his life had been knocked off its stand. Ashamed that the man who knocked it was my other son and that I hadn't secured the house against it. At the police station, we sat under a poster that said, Report, Financial Crime, and a picture of a smiling officer pointing to a phone. The desk sergeant listened, took our statement, typed with 2 fingers, and gave us a case number. This happens more than you'd think, he said. Like a weather report you don't want to believe. A family member thinks a signature is just a line and a car is just a thing. It's not. He told us a detective would follow up. He didn't promise anything else. I didn't ask for what he couldn't give. We called the dealer again, this time with the DMV hold number and a police report to recite. The manager's tone changed shapes. He said they had acted in good faith and verified ID at the time of sale. I asked him to describe the ID. He said he couldn't. I told him the state board could ask differently. He suggested, in the tone of a man who knows how to skate but sees thin ice, that if we could come to an arrangement with the buyer, the dealership would consider unwinding the deal. Consider, not promise. Consider. Finding the buyer took 3 calls and 1 frustrated hang-up. When he finally called from a blocked number, he introduced himself as Mark. He sounded tired and maybe kind. He said he'd found my number on an insurance card they'd stuffed in the glove compartment. He said he needed the car for work and didn't want to get caught in a mess that wasn't his. I told him it wasn't his mess, but it had rolled over him anyway. I explained the hold, the affidavit, the police report, and what it meant. If he kept driving a car with a title under a fraud hold, he risked losing it later without warning. I'm not trying to ruin your week, I said. I'm trying to stop someone from pretending this is their car to sell. He agreed to meet us at the police station, so nobody says anyone did anything, his words. We brought the affidavit and the hold printout. He brought the keys and his temporary tag and the bill of sale. Under the polite hum of a fluorescent light and a detective's neutral nod, we traded documents like a ceasefire. The buyer brought the car back under police supervision. He said he'd go back to the dealer for a refund. I told him if they balked, I would file the complaint myself with the licensing board. I gave him a copy of our police report and my card with a number he could hand to anyone who needed an adult voice. The car looked like our car and not our car. The seat was set for a different spine. A pine tree dangled from the mirror, trying to erase someone else's days. We drove it home and parked it 2 houses down and took a picture, because pictures are proof, and I've learned the world likes proof more than it likes truth, told by a man with his hat in his hands. Now the part I dreaded and owed. My conversation with Ryan. He came over because I told him to, which is a thing grown men shouldn't have to hear from their father and some still need. He sauntered into the kitchen with a face arranged like this would be handled with a stern talk and a Sunday dinner. I slid the police report across the table. He didn't touch it. I slid the DMV hold next, then the affidavit. I said nothing. I let paper speak. What, he said slowly, are these? That, I said, is what it looks like when you pretend your brother's name is yours. That is what it takes to make a state stop believing a lie you started. That is what happens when you cross the line where borrowing becomes stealing, and stealing becomes a crime I cannot ignore because I love you. He tried a story. He said he was helping. He said Miles didn't need the car as much as he did. He said he was going to pay him back. He said the dealer knew. He said he had a plan. You didn't have a plan, I said. You had a shortcut. I told him the next part in a voice I didn't recognize until I had to use it. You will call the dealer today and tell them to refund the buyer. You will sign whatever the DMV needs you to sign to admit you forged that title. You will meet me in small claims court when your brother files for the costs we've incurred, the lost wages for the days he missed work, the fees we paid, the cost of getting a car back you took. Or you will meet a prosecutor instead. He stared at me, then looked away. He put his hands on his head the way he used to when a coach told him to take a lap. For a second, I saw the kid who played catch with me until the dusk made the ball dangerous. Then the mask returned. You would take your own son to court, he asked, outrage a last tool? I took a breath. I would take a man who did this to my other son to court, I said. I would. And I am, I added. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I wanted to stop pretending pain wasn't in the room. Miles filed the small claims case because our lawyer friend said the amount fit, and because sometimes simple is the best kind of hammer. We printed receipts for everything: the filing fee, the notary fee, $10 and a lesson, the gas money for driving between offices and stations, a letter from his boss showing the hours he missed, a printout of the DMV statutes the clerk had circled for us, simple English explaining that a title transfer requires the owner's consent and signature and that a forged title is void. Our judge sat on a high shelf of a courtroom that smelled like dust and possibility. He listened as Miles spoke like a man who didn't want to be there and planned his sentences anyway. He turned to Ryan and asked if he had permission to sell the car. Ryan said no. He asked if he signed his brother's name. Ryan started to say we, then stopped, then said I. The judge scribbled something that looked like relief. The judge ordered restitution and community service. He told Ryan to pay Miles back for the documented losses and to complete community service hours with a nonprofit that helps people keep their cars when small crises become big ones. It was, for the judge, a move that made sense. For me, it was mercy, and mercy is a lesson with a bill. The dealer returned the buyer's money after the buyer, to his credit, told them he would file a complaint with the licensing board and tell the story out loud while holding our badge-numbered case in his hand. I filed the complaint anyway because some lessons need repeating. The dealer unwound the sale after the state got involved. The board's investigator called to confirm facts and documents and asked about the ID verification the salesman had bragged about. The investigator's tone had the fatigue of a man who watches corners get cut with the same dull blade. I told him I wasn't interested in ruining anyone's business. I just wanted the line between honest and not made thick and public. At home, the quiet changed shape. Miles parked the Corolla with a kind of tenderness that made me look away. Lena moved the plastic tub from the hallway to the garage, and then to our bedroom, and then looked at me and said, "This is ridiculous. We bought a safe, not the kind you think burglars can lift, the kind you bolt to the floor with a sound that says permanent. Into it, we placed every title, every registration, every passport, every original birth certificate, and the one-page list of who gets access and who does not. We moved every title and document into a safe, not a hallway cabinet. We wrote to the DMV and asked them to add a note to Miles's record requiring an in-person appearance for any future title changes. We froze Ryan out of the administrative parts of our life not to be cruel, but to be clear." Ryan called Bliss. "He came by 3 Sundays later and stood in the driveway with a cardboard box full of tools he claimed were ours. He put it down and said he was sorry in the way a man says it, when the word is new and he is still deciding whether it fits. He paid the first installment of what he owed his brother. He said he would pay the rest. He asked if he could come back inside. I told him yes, because love is stubborn, and also told him the conditions under which he could stay. He looked wounded and agreed. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're instructions for how to keep loving people without lying about the harm they can do. This is where a neat story would have Ryan redeemed and Miles relieved and me absolved. This isn't that story. We're a family that learned late what paperwork can do and what it can't. A DMV hold can stop a lie from becoming a fact. A police report can make a future judge read the first page closely. A small claims order can make a man pay attention to the shape of his choices. None of it scrubs the film off the trust between brothers. Trust doesn't very often break, it erodes. And then you have to build a dam and learn how to check it every time it rains. If you care about the mechanics, here's what worked in plain English. We brought proof, not fancy proof, ordinary proof. Old checks showing Miles's signature, the purchase contract with his name printed by a bank that doesn't make typos, the registration card that doesn't lie. We did the DMV thing fast because until they print a new title, notice, and a hold can stop a bad transfer. We filed an affidavit of non-consent and kept the stamped copy. We filed a police report because family matter is what people say when they don't want paperwork. We closed the circle with the buyer, who didn't need to be our enemy to become our ally for an afternoon. We told the dealer that as is doesn't cover if. The DMV clerk and the detective and the judge didn't save us. They believed the part of our story the system can handle, the part with forms. In our kitchen last week, Miles asked me if I hate Ryan. No, I said, and meant it. I hate what he did. I hate that I made it easy. I hate that I laughed at the wrong joke, and I hate that I stored your life in a tub labeled I important when what I meant was privet. We're changing that. It's not perfect. It's better. I'm telling you this as a father who has stood in enough lines in government buildings to know which magazines are missing their covers. If you have titles, registrations, deeds, anything with your name on a line, don't leave it in a hallway cabinet, a desk drawer, a laundry room bin with the light bulbs. Put it in a safe you control, or a box at a bank with a key only you hold. Make it a habit, no exceptions. No, I'll file it later. If your kid buys a car and finishes a loan, celebrate. Then walk the paper to the safe together. And if you're tempted to think, my family would never, remember that families don't always become strangers before they do strange things. I chose to forgive, but I did not forget. In case it matters to anyone trying to climb out of a version of this mess, here's what the last bit looks like. Ryan finished his community service hours handing out forms at a nonprofit where people try to keep their cars from being repossessed. He called me one night after a shift and said, "Dad, people don't just lose cars, they lose jobs, then apartments, it's all connected." He sounded older. He brought Miles the last payment in cash because the judge's order told him to and because he needed to feel the weight of it. They stood in the driveway, the Corolla behind them, and said nothing for a full minute. Then they talked about an oil change. It's not peace. It's a start. Sometimes, on a Sunday morning before the road remembers it's supposed to be busy, I take the Corolla out with Miles riding shotgun. We go to the diner that puts coffee down before you sit. I watch him drive home, hands at 10 and 2, eyes forward in a way that has nothing to do with the mirror. Independence isn't just ownership. It's knowing you can keep what's yours without asking permission from people who like to decide. If you ever find yourself standing in a driveway that suddenly has too much space, do what we did. Don't freeze. Gather proof. Go to the DMV and speak in verbs. Freeze, flag, affidavit. Call the police and ask them to make a report so your future has a case number. Be kind to the buyer if you can. They didn't cause the weather. Push the dealer with the right words. State licensing board, complaint, unwinding the sale. And when you're back home and your heart finally decides to slow down, move your papers out of the hallway. Put your life where only you can reach it. DeWoy will tell you this is about a car. It isn't. It's about a father learning late how to close the door and still invite his sons in. It's about drawing a line so clearly that even when someone you love steps over it, you can point to the paint and say, there, that's where you went wrong, and this is how we go right. Keep your titles and registration only in your possession, never stored, by relatives or left in a place anyone can rifle and call it helping. Small habits are armor. Plain paper, safely kept, is stronger than people think. And when a bad piece of paper tries to take what's yours, go make a better one and put your name on it the way you mean it. Stay safe.